The left, of course, has tried to demonize him, and the right's tried to embrace him. Both are missing the point. The rich men north of Richmond are here in Washington, D.C. We're 100 miles north of Richmond. They are Republican and Democrat. They have the values of urban America, of rich America. Rural America is just different, and they're fighting back. Kurt Bardella is here, who's been with us through the country music saga of 2023. It's pretty wild, sort of how this music genre you and I both love has now exploded. I was listening to Oliver Anthony just then, and it got me thinking that if the left's mad at you and the right's mad at you, you're probably doing something right.
Oh my God! I mean, listen, this is something where every single person in politics should watch that full interview. Hear what he has to say. This is truly an artist who wrote a song that had no political designs, no political ambitions, not trying to be a puppet for either ideology, but just making the point that a lot of people in this country feel completely left behind by everybody here in Washington, no matter what party you believe in, no matter what ideology you subscribe to. People are being left behind. And they're being left behind by people who represent bigger cities, bigger towns, who don't think about what it's like to be a working person in this country in a small town with a one-stoplight town.
Or no stoplight town, or no stoplight county, like where I spent a lot of time when I grew up. Look, we've seen this happen slowly and then very quickly, to quote Hemingway, over the past couple of years. But very quickly this summer, Jason Aldean's song went to #1 on the Billboard charts. Oliver Anthony, #1 on the Billboard charts. Yellowstone, the movie, now all of a sudden, Yellowstone, the TV show, now the #1 TV show in the country. Sound of Freedom, the #1 movie in the box office. There's all these cultural touch points. You said that there's more people in urban America than there are in rural America. Is that really true, though?
I think that in terms of just population, density, yes, there is. But when you talk about, again, I think there's this, that's why what they call it the flyover states, right? It's where all the coastal elites fly over these large swaths of geography, and they don't really think about them in their day-to-day life and the political decision-making that's going on, the political calculus that goes on. They're not sitting there thinking, well, what is that coal miner in that small town thinking about? What's it like for that person to try to get health care? What's it like for that person to try to afford groceries at the grocery store, fill up their gas tank? That's what Oliver's singing about here. Those are the people that he's trying to give a voice to.
All right. Not to make this too much about politics, but we have to a little bit. Aren't those the people that Donald Trump realized in 2015 and 2016 weren't being spoken to?
Yeah. Oh, the original slogan that I always thought that Democrats missed the boat on here was "Drain the Swamp." That might as well be the precursor to this song, Richmond North of Richmond, because that's what he's talking about. He was talking about the people who genuinely feel that nobody in Washington on any ballot actually gives a damn about their life, their values, their way of life, their culture, their upbringing, their family, their lineage, their heritage. They feel like no one here even tries to understand what that feels like and looks like. Trump successfully tapped into that with Drain the Swamp. He got veered away from that later on in life, and that's fine and well, but I think that the reason why Trump was so potent in the beginning was everybody who heard that slogan thought, I completely agree with that.
I can get on board with that. And sort of everybody who hears Oliver Anthony's song can get on board with it as well, even ex-urban or suburban folks as well. But this goes to an issue that we've been talking a lot about on the program, which is this idea of the lack of the fundamental fairness in the American economy. People just don't feel things are fair anymore. Part of what makes America great is that it is fair. But if you think about the urban-rural divide, rural values versus urban values, it's something that Vivek Ramaswamy is trying to touch on. Now, whether he's gotten there or not, to be determined. We'll play what he's been saying. You tell us if it's as potent as Drain the Swamp.
God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history.
It may not capture things perfectly, but if you take that and you poll those things in rural America, it does pretty well.
Oh, absolutely it does. And this is one of those things where the messenger may not be the right one for that message, but that message absolutely resonates without question.
Well, Vivek Ramaswamy went to Harvard and Yale. Yeah. But in the same way, Donald Trump went to Wharton as a New York liberal and a New York businessman, but he tapped into that.
Well, but
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.